Carlos Warner, tell us about the prisoners you represent who are on hunger strike right now.
Thank you, Amy, for having me. We represent, as you said, 11 men there, and we believe the vast majority, if not all of them, are hunger striking, with the exception of the high-value detainee that we represent. We also believe that the majority of them are also being force-fed. The military says, I believe you said 24 is the latest number, but we believe the military rotates people on and off that force-feeding list. But I think debating about the numbers at this point is irrelevant. We know that this is the largest event that Guantanamo's ever experienced in terms of scope and duration. We're in crisis, and President Obama's doing nothing.
What triggered this hunger strike, Carlos?
There were about 4 years of détente between the guards and the men, where really the guards were understanding of the men, and the men were very respectful for the guards. And the guard force was changed in September. It went from the Army, or excuse me, from the Navy to the Army. And it was just, from that time, we started to have crisis. And you started to see that in the 9/11 trials with these stories about the men's documents being taken away. Basically, the Army made a decision: we want to take everything out of the camps and know what we're dealing with. This all came to a head on February the 6th, when the men's cells were stripped. And Muslim linguists were leafing through the Qurans with the Army looking on. And this was, as I've said, the spark that ignited this current strike. And from there, we've just devolved and devolved. The military is doing all the wrong things. I don't blame the military. They have an unenviable task there in Guantanamo, but they're doing all the wrong things in terms of ending the strike. They could end the strike, but more importantly, the president could end the strike if he took some time out of his busy schedule. He's preparing for the correspondence dinner, and that drives us crazy because we see our clients dying. And in 5-10 minutes, he could at least make incredible progress on ending the hunger strike, and he has no will to do so.
Carlos Warner, you spoke to one of your clients at Guantanamo on Friday. Who did you speak to, and what did he say?
Fayez al-Kandari. This is the third conversation I've had with him since the strike began. I visited him in person twice, and then on Friday I got a phone call, and things have gone downhill. He started to be force-fed, according to him, last Monday, and I got a notice about this last Wednesday from the government that he's being force-fed. And he told me that they're force-feeding him with what's called a size 10 tube, a bigger tube than is required. He said that this makes it difficult for him to breathe, and it induces vomiting. And he's asked them to give him a smaller tube. And the military refuses to do so. Why they would not do these things, we have no idea. But he underscored to me, because the military has clamped down, made it harder for the information to come out since this began. But he wanted me to emphasize that this is a peaceful protest, that any detainee that's striking out in anger is wrong, that this is a peaceful hunger strike to protest, first of all, the military's tactics, but most importantly also the indefinite detention. And he wanted to make that clear, that this is not a violent protest, that he wants the hunger strike to end, but so long as it goes on, he intends for it to be peaceful.
Carlos
he was in
Warner,
very bad shape.
I understand you have a letter from Fayez Mohammed al-Kandari. Could you read it to us?
I do, and what he did was, for his military lawyer, he made a lantern for him, and I saw that when I visited him in March, and he wrote this letter about the lantern. It's dated 3/21/13. Dear Mr. Warner, I made this lantern with my brothers. It's made with bits of paper and cardboard. We used a water bottle sanded on the floor as glass. We painted it with bits of paint and fruit juice. It's held together by pressure only. We made this lantern for those in the world who remember and pray for us during this time of suffering. Let its light fill you. Use it to bring peace to your heart. Thank you. Signed, Fayez al-Kandari. And when he wrote that, I mean, I felt that that was a goodbye letter, and it's tragic.
I want to turn to former Guantanamo prisoner Samir al-Haj, the only journalist held at the base, held there for more than 6 years without charge. In January 2007, he also began a hunger strike that lasted 438 days until his release in May of 2008. I spoke to him in Doha, Qatar, in December, where he works for Al Jazeera and where we had gone for the climate change summit. He talked about being violently force-fed during the hunger strike.
They doesn't bring small to big.
They bring a tube that's too big to put up your nose and down into your stomach.
When they take it by force.
So they jerk it out of your nose.
Yes, some blood coming. Yes, and many times they didn't cleaning the tube. What they feed the other guys, they come and same thing. They give it to you.
They use the tube that they used in the person they have seated next to you, yes. And then they put it into you, yes. Without cleaning it.
Without cleaning, you see the blood and everything.
You see the
inside,
blood.
Yes.
Did you say when they would take the tube of a man next to you and put it into you, shove it down through your nose into your stomach? Would you say something? Did you ask why they are doing this?
Yes, they told us, we want you to break your hunger strike. They tell us directly like that. They asked us to break our hunger strike. They said, we never deal with you as a detainees until you break your hunger strike.
That's former Guantanamo prisoner Samir al-Haj. I visited him at Al Jazeera, where he is a journalist in charge of the Human Rights Division, this past December. On Thursday, the American Medical Association sent a letter to U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel condemning force feeding, saying every competent patient has the right to refuse medical intervention, including life-sustaining interventions. As we wrap up, Carlos Warner, can you explain why these men continue to be held at Guantanamo? 166 men. The majority of them have been cleared for release.
Unfortunately, they're held because the president has no political will to end Guantanamo. And it falls on the left. And I'm part of the left. I'm a federal public defender. My wife campaigned for President Obama. But the bottom line is that the left isn't pushing for the release. The president is blaming this on the right and saying the right has made these restrictions. Well, what the left doesn't understand, and the right has pointed this out, is that the president has the authority to transfer individuals if he believes that it's in the interest of the United States. But he doesn't have the political will to do so because 166 men in Guantanamo don't have much pull in the United States. So, but the average American on the street does not understand that half of these men, 87 of these men, 86 of them, excuse me, 86 of the men are cleared for release, meaning that the government has said that not only haven't they done anything wrong, but they're not dangerous, that they could be released immediately. And they languish there in Guantanamo while the president is guffawing with, you know, the social elite in Washington. We're just asking the president to appoint somebody to start working on the problem. If the president does that, we can make incredible progress in a year. I've been in this situation for many years now, and I know where these men can go. And frankly, the executive knows as well. The State Department knows where these men can be placed, and they were working on those solutions. But the president doesn't want to implement what the State Department has done.
Where can they be placed?
Well, there are rehabilitation centers in both Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, built under the eye of the United States, where they could go, the 86 men could go in an instant if the president had political will to transfer them. And not every man can go there, but we could certainly start working on many of these innocent men. And if you are not on that list of 86, the president has no process for you to say, for you to challenge your detention. So many of the individuals that he has held indefinitely and say should be held indefinitely, they haven't done anything wrong either. But basically, the president has said these are people that if we release them, we're afraid they might harm us because they're ticked off. We've held them for 11 years without charge. But that's not what who we are as a country. As a country, we don't hold people for what they may do in the future. So give those men process. Give them an ability to be released. Now, the left has to mobilize. Senator Feinstein came out and said, let's get rid of the innocent men. Let's get them out of Guantanamo. But the rest of the left has to do that. It starts there. And as much as I would like to cast blame on the right, can't do it here. We have to cast blame on the president. He needs to pick up this ball and run with it, or people are going to die, Amy.